In the last video, you created a complete copy of a WordPress site at a different server location and URL. With the plugin, it was easy. But what was really going on? By migrating the site manually, you'll do all the steps yourself and through the process, learn all the steps and how they work together. By the end of this video, you'll understand the process of migrating a WordPress site and you'll be able to move a site yourself or manage a staging area as long as you have access to the files and the database. Let's get going. Start by making sure that you're logged into your brochure-site WordPress installation locally using MAMP, and click Open Start Page so that you can open this MAMP start page and be able to access the database here using phpMyAdmin. And of course, if you're using your live SiteGround account, you can go to the cPanel, and down here under Databases, you can access it through phpMyAdmin. If you're using the local by Flywheel local development environment, you'll want to go and open that site, open local by Flywheel, and make sure you have access to the database for that site using the Adminer button. Once you have that open, it's pretty similar to phpMyAdmin, where you can do things like export the database and other things that we'll be doing in the next section. Another thing you'll want to do to prepare for a manual migration is to create a new site in local by Flywheel and name that site anything you like. And we'll create a server area in that way so that we can have an empty server area. As you know, in local by Flywheel, it downloads and installs WordPress for you. So with this manual migration site, once we have it created, we'll want to go back into the file structure and go where we have the local by Flywheel files under local sites, find that manual migration under app, under public, and just delete all of these files. Now we have an empty folder ready to be populated, as well as you'll also want to go into the database for that new site, and under manual migration, go to Adminer, and here we'll want to select all of the tables and then click drop. Now we're prepared. We have an empty database that does exist, it just doesn't have any tables, as well as an empty folder where we're going to be putting our files. Now you can follow along with the rest of the steps as we prepare this site for export, including the files as well as the database, and putting them in the new area in our local development environment. In the next sections, I use MAMP as well as show how to do it with the SiteGround live server, and you can follow along if you're using local by Flywheel using the steps we just did. What we're going to be doing is moving the Fireweed photography site that we made in the last two chapters over to a new staging area on our local machine at a different URL. This time, we're not going to be using the plugin, but we're going to be doing it manually. Instead of creating a brand new, fresh WordPress installation and a database to go with it, we're going to be copying all the files from the original brochure site URL and file structure, including the database. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up Windows Explorer, and I've got the same window open on either side here. The first thing I've already done is created a folder using this new folder button inside my MAMP htdocs folder called Manual Migration. Now it's empty at this point, but what I'm going to do is take the entire file structure from brochure-site and copy it over. So I'll pause the video while that's copying. For SiteGround users, we'll use the file manager to do this migration of files ourselves. So in the file manager, I know I have the files for this site within the brochure site folder. I'm going to go back up one level and create a new folder. I'm going to call this one Manual Migration. And now that I have that folder there, I need to capture all the files from brochure-site. So what I'll do is select them all. I just held Shift down, and I'm going to compress them into a zip file so it'll be easy to download and then upload into the next folder. So now that that's created my zip file, I can reload the page to take a look for it. There it is. It's called wp-admin.zip. Doesn't matter what it's called. But I'll take this file and then I'll double click it to download it to my computer. Great, now that that's downloaded, it's in my downloads folder on my computer. I could go up one level again and go into manual migration, and since this directory is empty, I know that's where I need to place the files. So I'm going to hit upload and browse to that spot on my computer. Here it is. That'll give me a message at the bottom right when it's done uploading. Now that that says 8 megabytes complete, I can just click go back and it'll close that tab, and I've got my zip file there. The last step will be to highlight it and click extract files. There we go. Now I can reload the page and I got all my files there. Again, I can delete this zip file since it made a copy and unzipped the files into the same directory. Back in Windows Explorer, the files have downloaded into the MAMP folder. There it is. Now that I have an exact copy of the file structure that brochure-site is using over in my new URL folder called Manual Migration, I'm going to create a new database and then make a copy of the database that this site uses inside that new database. So I'll go back into Firefox and open the MAMP start page, and I'm going to click PHP My Admin. This is managing the databases that are being used within MySQL that MAMP is using on the server on my local machine. And when that opens, now here is the brochure site database. And what I'm going to do is first create a new database. I'm going to call it Manual Migration. Now, if you recall, when we make a fresh WordPress installation, we use the WordPress installation script in order for it to connect to the database and then populate the actual database tables and rows. Now, this is an empty database in the same way that we've done it before, but what we're going to do is export all the database tables from the brochure-site database, and then we're going to import them into the manual migration, thereby creating an exact copy of the database. So within PHP My Admin, click Brochure Site, and you can make sure that the database is Brochure Site up here, and then click Export. All we do is keep the default settings and click Go, and that will prompt our browser to save a file, and I'll just click OK. Great, that's in my downloads folder. Now all I have to do is click the manual migration database. Now I can tell that it's the database that I'm in is manual migration, and I'll click the import tab. Leave everything as the defaults again, click browse, and go ahead and go into my downloads folder. Find that brochuresite.sql file and select it, hit open. And I can go to the bottom and click go. There we go, that just took 15 seconds or so, and it says import has been successfully finished, 96 queries executed, and we can go ahead and look at it. If I click manual migration or hit the structure tab, you can see that all those tables are within it, and there we go. There's a couple more steps to edit, and if you're in the database under manual migration now, let's look at WP options. You can see that the old URL is in here under site URL and home, and we'll want to change that to the new manual migration URL. There's one, and there's two. At SiteGround, we'll create the new database slightly differently. Go down to MySQL Databases, and then we're going to create a new database this way. So I'll call this one Manual. And I've got to remember that the database name is gregd11_manual. Then I need to create a user. If it's short enough, I can call it the same thing, and choose a password. Okay. Create that user with a username and a password that, again, I need to remember. And then I need to give that user access to its database. I want to give that user all privileges. And it's been updated, so I can go back. Now, I'll just quickly write down all the information that I just entered so I don't forget it. Now I can go back to the cPanel home and go back down to the databases section to open PHP MyAdmin. Now if I look under gregd11, I can see my different databases here, and if I click Manual, you can see that there's no tables found in that database. Just like when working locally with MAMP, I just have to go into the brochure database and export the file. And then I can close that and go into the manual, which is empty, and import that same file. I'll click manual on the left here to look at the tables and go into WP options just like when working in MAMP. And I'll change the site URL on both site URL and home rows. Now there's one more change we need to make our new URL work in a new tab up here and be a duplicate of this old tab, brochure site, and that is to edit the WP config file. I'm going to go into Windows Explorer again, and in my manual migration, remember we made an exact copy of all the files, including the WP config file, which is set to communicate to the other database. So I'm going to go ahead and open Atom, the code editor, and navigate to this manual migration set of files. I'll hit File in Atom and add a new project folder. I'm going to find it within htdocs and manual migration. Great, I can close migration 3 from the last project, and if I click WP config, this one is in manual migration. Great. Now instead of brochure site, this one's going to the new database name. And the username, the password, and the host should be all the same. I'll click Control S to save. And now that should be the last step. If I type localhost / my URL, if everything's connected correctly, I should get an exact copy of the site. Nice. Looks like everything is working well. I'll open a new tab and make sure I can log into the WP admin area. Now I've created an exact copy, so my username and password will be the same as that user and password on the brochure-site URL. The URL is correct. I'm logged in. This is great. Everything seems to be working.